Hey, this is Mira Beck, the founder of Overnight Success Publishing and host of what used to be Overnight Success TV, now newly rebranded to Wake Up and Be Successful, which used to be our tagline at the end. So now we actually are making it the name of the show. And Overnight Success TV is gonna change into a network. So from now on, we're gonna start adding more content from some of our awesome clients that have something to share on the success topic. So stay tuned for more information on the Overnight Success TV network. So for today, I have our first guest for the Wake Up and Be Successful show, Dr. Scot Gray. Scott, thank you so much for joining me in our new studio, our new set. It's gonna be awesome. And our conversation today is really gonna be leading toward helping you think bigger and think outside the box. And how can you take your company and maybe your one-person operation and expand it or add more products and services to it to target your existing customers and so on. So if you are interested in expanding your practice and changing your lifestyle and going bigger, definitely stay tuned for this show because Dr. Scott has done it all, and I can't wait to dive into his story. So, and let's just do exactly that. So why don't we start with the background, kind of give us the backstory. Where do you come from? Maybe your, the family background, because a lot of people are born into entrepreneurial families and most are not. So let's kind of establish the foundation of your success story.
Definitely. So, well, thanks for having me on. I feel honored to be the first guest on the new show. So what I want to do is just, I'll give you a little background of growing up and then how I ended up where I am now. But so I started, my dad was, he was an IT guy, he was a computer guy, and then got really stressed out in corporate America. And around the time I was like 16 or 17, he actually went into entrepreneurship and started his own business. And that kind of got me interested. But for me, ended up going down the route of becoming a chiropractor. So I'm a chiropractor by trade. And so I went through school, graduated in 2003. And so I got into that. I went to Kentucky and I learned how to run a practice, how to, deal with employees, hire employees, fire, all that fun stuff of actually running the business, marketing and advertising, that kind of stuff.
That's cool.
Did that and then opened my practice with my brother in 2004. And when I did that, what I did is I started reading a lot of books about success and different mindsets. And what I found was a couple of my favorite books were The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, which a lot of people are familiar with.
Yeah, for sure.
And in the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series, there's one called Cashflow Quadrant.
Sure. Yeah.
And both of those really touched on the fact that there's an entrepreneurial myth out there, and a lot of people who are self-employed, they end up having a business that's owning them as opposed to owning a business. And so I found, I looked at this thing like, I don't want to have a business where I have to be there, have to work every day. And I realized, okay, so everything I just did to become a chiropractor, I put myself in the position where I have to be there. I'm the guy, right?
You got yourself a job, right?
I bought myself a job, right? And so it's like the handcuffs were on. And so I decided back then, it's kind of funny. I got the degree and then I'm like, okay, now I want to get out of this.
That's funny.
Right? And it's not that I didn't love chiropractic and what we did. I knew I could change people's lives that way. But I started thinking to myself, I don't want to be the one actually doing it. Sure. I want to grow a large business.
Yeah.
And so as I started going through it with my brother, we worked together. We ended up splitting ways. He kind of had a different thing. He wanted to become a chiropractic neurologist, did different stuff. So he went that direction. And I just continued to grow the practice. And then eventually just got to the point where I started hiring associates, a doctor to come in and help me. And we're actually talking about a guy earlier, Kent Clothier. I met Kent, a guy named Vinny Fisher, and another guy named Ryan Moran. These three guys, I saw some talks that they did, and they're talking about mindset and thinking bigger, and really just talking about the fact that, the time is now to do things in your life. You may, like me, I wanted something different in my life. But I was scared to do it, right? I wanted to live in a different place. I was in Ohio. My wife and I, wanted to live in Florida and test that out. But I had this practice. I couldn't stay there. And this is literally a year and a half ago that I started making decisions. Okay, so I'll tell you kind of this last 18 months what's happened. So I decided I'm not going to see patients anymore. I'm going to have my doctors do it. I'm going to fully get out of the practice, and I'm going to start a separate area where I can have a practice and actually have other medical doctors, nurse practitioners do the treatments. So what I did is I went from being a chiropractor to getting out of it, having that practice kind of run itself. Okay, I had the people in place to run it, and then I started an integrated practice with a nurse practitioner, built that up, started a second practice. I was really free from, I set it up so that I was free from having to be in the practice. I had docs doing consults, doing the exams, doing the treatments and all that. And so I had 2 offices in Ohio. My wife and I and my girls, we moved down to Florida. And I wasn't really sure if I wanted to start something here. Approached the doc, started talking about it. Long story short, in about a year and a half, I went from being a chiropractor with associates to not seeing patients anymore. I have 6 stem cell clinics now, and we're actually, I told you on the way over here, we just had a meeting this morning about opening our 7th clinic. So we're just continuing to take a system. I mean, really this was built around me building a system that really is what I implement in each office, and just get that system in there, get it going, and then go to the next one. So it's been 15 years of building this system, building a way to do this, to get out of the practice and take the handcuffs off. And so I've got more free time with my family, more income, which is nice, and really just freedom to do the things that we want to. And I feel like life is really about creating memories with your family, spending time, and really that freedom. None of us end up down the road thinking, I wish I would have worked more. And being able to step back and focus on this one thing, get it up and going, and kind of take my hands off of it and
really cool.
let it go. So
all right, well that's awesome. So you pretty much covered a lot of points. I was just listening to this, and so what stood out first of all was how you realized that you were not in the business of chiropractic, adjusting people, but in the business of marketing your practice.
Right.
And even the getting out of the business, basically, as soon as you got into it, pretty much, isn't that like exactly what people, when they start their own business, are dreaming about? Like when you started your own business, was it because you wanted to spend 7 days a week creating whatever, gadget, widget, whatever you're doing, or service? Or was it because you wanted the lifestyle, you wanted to take vacations with your family, you wanted the freedom? And I have the exact same story. I used to work at the support desk, and then one day I decided, to do my own business, went to school, whatever. And as soon as I started my own business, because I wanted more than 2 weeks of vacation, because back in Europe, when I was growing up, it's minimum 4, typically 6 weeks of vacation.
Right. Yeah.
Here it's 2. If you're lucky, like you have to build up to it.
Yes, absolutely.
So my thing was, okay, let me just start my own business, get 6 weeks of vacation, go to Czech twice a year, whatever. And I took about exactly 0 days off in 2 years. Like 2 years, I was working around the clock. I haven't gone back to see my family for over 2 years.
Yeah.
So, and then I finally realized that it's more about marketing than the actual what you do.
Yeah.
And that's the myth, like the technician versus the manager, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
So, and that's why I joined Peak Performers. When you and I actually met initially, it was like 10 years ago, when we were really just focusing on studying mindset and marketing and the bigger picture, right? So just, that was one, I think, big point is see where you are today in your business and in your life, and kind of look back and see, are you really doing or living the way you envisioned when you started your business to begin with? That would be my big challenge question for the viewers today.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the self-education and, looking into reading books. You mentioned the E-Myth and Think and Grow Rich. We've mentioned both on this show before, but definitely we're going to put some links below the video and kind of give you links to Amazon, whatever. Like, get those books, because the E-Myth, I've read it at least 4 or 5 times. Yep. And Think and Grow Rich is like a book I read annually. That's almost like one of those things. Yeah. So a lot of great points in already. Like we are a few minutes into it, and I'm like feeling like this is like super cool. And then you touched on something really super important, which you basically were talking about growing.
Yeah.
And you added your stem cell portion to your practice, to your clinics.
Yeah.
Which to me is ingenious way to basically offer more services to the same people, right?
Right, and it was just like a whole nother level. So I've always believed as a chiropractor that the power that made the body is the power that heals the body.
Yeah.
When I started learning about stem cells, like when I first started thinking about integrating with a medical model, as a chiropractor, it's like, I don't want to really get into that. But stem cell being something that's totally natural and literally the cells that made the body can heal the body, I got really interested and started to see, well, this is something that I've got patients that, have severe degenerative hips and knees and backs and things that I haven't been able to help with chiropractic, or I've had to even refer them for surgery. I was like, this is a perfect thing that could come along, and I have patients right now that could use this. So brought that in, started that with my practice, and then just, kept going, making sure I had the systems in place, then replicate it, make sure that's good, then replicate it, and just kind of, copy and paste kind of deal.
What else is there in chiropractic that other doctors are adding, or maybe you have added to your practice besides adjustments?
Yeah, so the big thing that I first did was something called spinal decompression, and that was the tables that help with disc bulges, disc herniations, those types of things.
Saved my life. So I had a doc recommended me for $100,000 surgery. Yep. And then one of my chiropractic friends just put me on a table for 6 weeks. Yeah. And my back's been good for, 5-6 years now. So
absolutely. That was the first big game changer for us, for something that was complemented chiropractic very well and was able to help symptoms, again, that typically we would refer out for a surgery. So that was a great addition. I know a lot of docs add neuropathy treatments, some natural neuropathy. I don't do that myself. I actually partnered with a doctor down here in Florida, and he does a lot of that. But there's a lot of different things.
Supplement stuff, I guess, products.
People do supplements. I didn't get into that as much just because I didn't, I don't know. I just felt like you're people with supplements, they can go anywhere and get good supplements, right? The supplement market is huge, and I just didn't feel like it was something that was I felt like it would take me away from my focus. Sure. So if you want to talk about another book that changed my life, it's one called The One Thing.
The One Thing, yeah.
Right? And that's one of the reasons that I really got away from the supplement thing was decompression was a great service that could come right alongside of chiropractic, where supplements I felt was kind of like this separate thing and lost focus, and then people would think well, maybe I can just do supplements and not worry about these other things. So I felt like it was a distraction, and The One Thing was really a big thing for me is just to stay focused, because that's when you can really take things to the next level. And that being said, I had to make a very difficult decision after I had started my stem cell practice, and that was to actually sell my chiropractic practice. Gotcha. Because I was running we haven't really talked about it, but I do marketing for doctors all over the country. So I had my chiropractic practice, I had my stem cell practice, and I had a marketing company. Yeah. And as you guys know, when you try to do everything, you're not good at anything. Yeah. So I talked to my associate who had been with me for 6 years, and I said, look, I'd like to sell this to you, and he was more than happy to buy the practice and take over. So I got rid of that, which that was my baby. It's that first business that you start, and really what supported us for so many years. But I had to get rid of it so that I could focus, and there's no way I would be where I am today if I wasn't totally focused on building the stem cell and the marketing portion like I did.
Okay. So there's another, I think, point to just highlight here, and that's the one thing. So you should really probably kind of perfect the one thing and create a system and just make it work on its own before moving on to the next one thing. Right. So there could be multiple one things, but you should probably not do all at the same time. Is that kind of the
point? Ryan Dice, a guy with Digital Marketer, told me one time, he said, a lot of people, what they do is they start to build a bridge to success, and then all of a sudden there's a new idea. So they go back and they start building another bridge to success, right? Yeah. And then it's new idea. It's the shiny object syndrome, us, right? So I just decided no, just build one bridge over, and then take what that does and bring that back over, and then build another bridge next to it. And then all of a sudden you have 2, 3, 4 bridges all leading to things that are bringing you return on investment. So that's what I did with get one clinic going, get another clinic going, and now we have 6, and we're building the next bridge to the 7th. So really cool. You just keep keep going.
Yeah.
But get one done.
Get one done before starting
you go
the other.
to the next thing.
Yeah,
That's
the
key.
I think that is really the key, and I want to definitely make that point. So as an exercise for today, or just kind of as you're watching this, start thinking about your systems. If whatever it is you're doing right now, if there are systems, can it be replicated? Are you building a business and a machine versus just doing the thing yourself, and then if anything happens to you, the business is gone? Like, do you have that type of business and that type of foundation? If you don't, start thinking about it. Start thinking, maybe make a list of what your customers are already buying from you and what else would the same people be willing to buy. And now you can either you join ventures with other people, you can add those things to your services or your practice if it's, somebody that's like a chiropractor. Yeah. But if nothing else, I think from this episode, I would suggest that that's what people do, is just kind of take a hard look on what they're doing, their systems. Is it something that they can grow? Or like in your case, maybe the chiropractic thing, or in my case at that time, I used to have another studio, and look at the 80-20 rule. Like,
right.
If you are spending 80% of your time somewhere where you're only getting 20% of your income from, then maybe there's something that needs to change.
Yep. And a lot of times we're emotionally attached. Like I said, it's like my chiropractic practice. That's what I went to school for. I built this thing, and it's emotional attachment, but it wasn't serving where I was going. Yeah. So I had to get rid of it. And just a quick resource based on what you just said, you're talking about building systems and building a business that doesn't doesn't really need you. There's a million things I could give as resources, but I love the book Built to Sell.
That's good, yeah.
Because it's really a great book about how to build in systems and not be dependent on you or me or certain people, where you can just plug people in where they need to be to do that. That's just another resource when it comes to that.
I don't know if a lot of people realize that really in every business, unless your goal is to run it till you die and then let it die with you, you should look at what's the exit strategy. Maybe you don't want to get out of it in 5 years or 10 years, but at some point, like you said, either sellable or like back in the days, it used to be the kids would take over the parents' business, and you don't see it as much today, but everybody is doing their own thing. But is the business sustainable without you? And whether you decide to sell it, whether you decide to step back, like you were mentioning, becoming chairman of the company and just kind of an advisor and maybe the high-level thinker, but have everybody else run it. So it's almost like a passive stream of income if you build it right.
Yeah, have you ever thought about you not being the CEO?
And people talk about passive stream of income investments into real estate or stocks and whatever, but your business could be a passive stream of income, or as close as it gets, if you do it right.
Yeah, if you do it right. And it's, it takes a lot of work and focus to do the right things, and really become a master of delegation is really going to be a huge key thing. If you want to do this, to get a CEO and a COO. Basically the progression is, you're the CEO, eventually you get to the point where you can hire a COO to start running things, and then, build it up. Usually a COO, just like we're talking about, Bill Glazer and Dan Kennedy and that, they brought in Bill and he 4X GKIC, like that. Well, how did he do that? Well, he's more of that organizational kind of guy. So you bring in someone like that to grow your business, and then you can pull in another CEO and kind of step back, and be more of the person overseeing the company. And that's really, for me, that's my goal. And it's not really just it's not to do less. It's, I want the freedom, but also I kind of think that there's probably some CEOs out there that can do a better job than me too.
Possibly.
It's a rare case that you have a Jeff Bezos that starts a company, with this small little book company, and is still the CEO at this multi-billion-dollar company. So it's a very rare case. So think about down the road, maybe you're going to bring someone in, and many times I think that we talk about stuff like this and people kind of shut down because you mentioned the thinking outside the box. And so anyone that knows me knows that probably my biggest hero in business is Walt Disney. And I model a lot of what he does. And you just talked about a business that runs without you. The guy died in 1966. And look at how Disney's grown
Yeah.
since 1966. He wasn't even alive when they opened Walt Disney World here in Florida, right? So, how do you set up a business like that that goes forward? But one of the things that Walt always said is he said, well, he got frustrated when people talked about thinking outside the box. Because when you talk about thinking outside the box, what you're admitting is that there's a box.
Yeah.
And so many people are living in a box, thinking that I have to do it this way. I'm a chiropractor. Why would I do something different than being a chiropractor? It's what I went to school for. Well, maybe you trained for something, or you've taken this role on in your business, and you've kind of locked yourself into that's what you're going to do, and you're the best at it. No one else can do it like you.
Yeah.
And the reality is, you've got to think anything's possible. What if you were the chairman? What if you were to find people better than you? And how big could your company get if you brought in people smarter than you to run it and grow it?
And I think that I would want to leave this portion of the interview with, you need to be able to see it. Like, you can take it to, 6 figures, 100,000, 200,000 maybe as a one-man operation if you do it right. But then to go to $500,000 or $1 million, now you need a person to work with you or for you. You need to expand a little bit. But when you think about it, if you are making $200,000 or $100,000, you want to make $1 million. If you don't see it, if you don't write down what would the company look like making $1 million, what would it look like making 5 or 10 or 100? Because it is different level and it's different, different approach. So if let's another exercise you can do is really just sit down and see what you're doing today, what your organizational chart looks like today, what roles are you doing, and then set your goals. Like, okay, if you want to go from 100,000 to $1 million, see who needs to do what. Like, what's your role? What do you need to hire out or subcontract or do joint ventures with? But I really think that if you don't actually write it down, if you don't create a picture, that there's no way that you can get to it. I mean, unless it happens by accident.
Absolutely. You've got to get, you look at you in the middle. It's kind of like you incorporated, and then all your team around you that's going to make things happen. So I literally do that. I have a visual of a circle, and then all these lines coming off of everyone around me, whether it's traffic creation, marketing, HR, PR, project managers, media buyers, you name it, tech people, building that team is key, because you'll never do this without a team. And I like what you're talking about, thinking down the road. Have you ever thought in your mind that your company could be worth $100 million or do $250 million? So you'll never get there if you're not shooting for it. So what if you actually shot to create $1 billion company? What would that look like? What would things have to be like? Now, I know you right now you can't envision what that means. I can't envision what that would be. But if that's my goal, I start thinking about what would that look like. So I started working with a mentor recently that thinks in the B's. He thinks in the billions. So now I'm starting to think, like, what would $1 billion business look like? And so it's totally changed my thinking and how I operate every day.
So I just read an article in one of the magazines about a guy that started a Peloton bike company. It was like $1.3 billion worth now. It's a bike and a streaming video.
Right.
But the vision, like they're not comparing themselves to another bike company. It's like comparing themselves to Apple. Like they're the Apple to the spinning class industry, whatever. But just to read it, 700-person operation. When they started in the basement initially with an instructor doing, videos for people so they can do it out of the house. But, thinking to the point where they are changing the industry, where they want to become the gym that people in the future will have at home by starting with one piece and adding treadmills, adding weights, adding more stuff to it. But when I read it, I was like, I can totally see working out that way and not going to a traditional gym anymore. That guy had that idea and took something that was just so simple and common everywhere else and fixed the problem and then grew it to this size. I think they're just starting out,
you think of it, I don't want to say it because it's so cliche now, but, Uber created a car company without, cars. Airbnb did it without real estate,
Yeah.
and now it's like this guy's doing it without gyms.
And it's really
He's
a
creating
technology
gyms
company.
without gyms.
Like all those you mentioned are basically technology companies that created technology. And the other thing is just kind of like, fulfilling that. Like it's not bike company building technology, it's technology company applying it to the spinning classes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So another like just thinking outside the box, like can you do something that would go a long way and just, touch a lot of people. Just, I love there's no box. Just think big.
Yeah, and I mean, what would have happened if this person came into the bike industry and wanted to, go in there and try to get part of the market there.
Yeah.
Like that's not where you go.
Yeah.
This is a great example of blue ocean strategy, right?
Yeah.
Go out into the blue ocean where nothing's been done,
Yeah.
as opposed to those shark infested waters of all the other bike
Yeah.
retailers. That's a hard market to enter.
Yeah.
He came up with something totally new that nobody had ever done before, and there's those types of places. There's not as much competition.
Sure.
Right.
And there's just, that's kind of the point of, even the billion can sound crazy, but there's so many different stories of people that have done it. Then start reading books. Like I read the autobiography on Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. I mean, that was a great story with Tesla and SpaceX and all that stuff. Like when you just reading those books makes you think bigger. Like
Absolutely.
it's just funny how it works.
It is, and I did that with Walt. And when you look at Elon and Walt, I think one of the biggest commonalities you see with those two is Elon was willing to risk everything.
Yeah.
If stuff, I mean, he just put his own money up, and he would just be broke, if it didn't work. And Walt did the same thing. He did it for Snow White. If Snow White was a failure, Disney would have been under. If Disneyland would have failed, they would have gone under. I mean, he just kept risking everything to build his next thing that he wanted to do. And Elon is the exact same way.
I think that's another great one, because you need to be not only willing to take the risk, but live with the consequences. So as an entrepreneur, you have two choices. Like you take the risk, and if you fail, you can crumble and fall apart and go on, depression, drinking, drugs, path and just be done. Or you go into it thinking, okay, if this happens, if it fails, am I okay with that?
Right.
And if you are okay with that, then failure is just another, I have a quote, failure is just a deposit to your success account.
Right.
And that's
what you learned
like,
through that is going to be amazing.
Just be willing to learn. Like, don't beat yourself up over failing. It's just failure is just part of the journey.
I just saw a quote by I think it was Johnny Ives from Apple, and it was something about when you get to the end, you've got the product, but you've got everything you learned through that process.
That's right. Yeah.
It's like you learn so much more through that whole process. And when you look at things, I feel like what we're kind of talking about now with people that are thinking at a whole nother level, it all goes back to Simon Sinek or Sinek, whatever you say. When you talk about Apple, he used them as the representation of the why, right? Of starting with why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that, that really is a big deal. And, really establishing why you're doing what you're doing, and working in your strengths to grow that, right? Because I love his example that, we'll buy an MP3 player from Apple, we'll buy a computer, we'll buy a watch, we'll buy all these things. But if you remember Gateway Computers, they would have said, like, here, buy an MP3 player from us or a watch from us. You're like, what are you talking about?
Company.
But they've set themselves up different. It's about the why. And, for me, that's a huge thing. And mine goes to how I want to change the world. And how I want to be with my family and the time I want to have with my family. Like, so it's all about balancing those things. Don't work more than 30 to 40 hours a week and still do all this. And it's possible if you know how to delegate and build teams, right? So I think that building teams and finding people smarter than you, that's really the key to doing this, where most people are control addicts and they, like, no one can do it as good as me. One of my main mentors, a guy named Vinny Fisher, said, you'll never be able to grow your business if you're not okay with a 70% version of yourself.
Sure.
Because I knew that for me to stop seeing patients, there may be people that left. My associate's not going to be exactly like me, right? And they may lose 1 or 2 more patients than me,
Sure.
which actually I think he's better than me, honestly. But anyway, you've got to be okay with that to let that go to build a business. Right, and we so many of us just think they're like, oh, we're the end all be all, and but gotta let it go.
Yeah, and I've been through it, and I know so many people that have. Same thing. Like I didn't want to do it. I was okay with losing some customers when I transitioned to other people running the events for us, and we didn't lose one.
Right,
and the events are great.
We
and
have
everything
this
is
fear.
Awesome.
In the back of our minds.
It's just a mindset, I think, and I like what you said, because I guarantee you there's somebody out there that does what you do better than you. You just don't think that yet because you want to do it all by yourself. Yep,
and if you train them the way that you learned and let them work in their strengths and do, add their genius to it, then you can see some really cool things happen.
So I feel like we can talk all day on this topic because it just keeps like every time you say something, I got like more stuff to add or ask you a question about it. But just so to wrap up this educational part of it, if somebody is watching, they own a professional practice or chiropractic clinic specifically, or they go to a chiropractor, they have somebody in their circle of influence. Or just generally, if they want to use what you do as just inspiration to think about their business, where can they go, and what can you share with the viewers?
There's a couple of places. We have one website called gmedigital.com, so it's like Gray Marketing Enterprises, gmedigital.com, and I do actually have a free video on there about mindset.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's really modeled off of a presentation I saw by Ryan Moran, and a lot of the mindset techniques and concepts that he teaches. So that's something you can get free. And then if you want to learn about our events, where we have what's called the Patient Infusion Method, and it's really this system that I created, and we teach doctors this system. And that's our events is doc360events.com. So it's DOC. The number is 360 events.
I will put the link below, but if you have somebody just think about if you have somebody in your circle of influence that it's in the chiropractic world, share with them the resource. It's going to be great. And I've been or done a couple of the events helping you record them, and it's awesome. Great content and huge success. Like, especially in that business, always blows my mind. Like, you can get what if you could get just one extra patient a month? What's the lifetime value of your customer? That's another thing. Like I said, we can go all day, but if you do know your lifetime value of your customer, it's so much easier to invest into growth and education and everything else, and see the return on your investment. Really, if you don't know those numbers, then everything is just expense.
That knowledge can really eliminate a lot of fear, right? Because then you can look at it really just as the numbers. Okay, if I spend this much and I only need 3, new patients that need care to break even. And if I get, 6 new patients, things are gonna be looking pretty good. And anything on top of that is just, gravy.
That's awesome.
So
I have a quick rapid fire set of questions to wrap this up for you. So we already mentioned a bunch of books, so I'm not gonna ask you about what you read. Tell me about your why. What's kind of like, you've been through the phase of growing the business and running around and doing all that stuff. Now you running big business and bigger company, but why do you get up in the morning and do what you do? What drives you?
First of all, the biggest thing for me is just being a great husband and dad. That's cool. And so part of what we do as entrepreneurs and business owners is teach our kids great work ethic, how to be smart in the world and how to make it, and really just teach them how to be an honest, ethical, great person in the world, and how to give back. And so that's my main driver. But if you look at the other side of things, the reason I became a chiropractor is to help people. People a lot of times tell me that I'm kind of like a bleeding heart guy. And so there's twofold to this. I love helping doctors increase their revenue, increase their lifestyle, and really increase how they provide for their family. But in turn, what does that do? That helps more people. So me getting outside of my chiropractic practice, now instead of just helping people in Marion, Ohio, now I help people all over the world get chiropractic care, stem cell therapy, eliminate neuropathy. Like I'm helping, I hope by the time I'm done, I've helped, 500 million people with their health. And I never would have done that in my little office.
Yeah.
And, again, that all goes back then to, my legacy with my family. And so that my girls, I have 2 girls, can see that and want to contribute to the world in the same way.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I just wish we had even more time to go on because this whole, if you are in any business where you are really good at what you do, you can start thinking about how can I teach others in the same industry to do what I do and then in turn affect more and more lives.
Yeah.
So if your goal in life is to touch millions of people or 500 million of people, you can really only do it by replicating the knowledge and by you teaching other dogs who then are treating patients. That's how you make it happen.
Just
that's
expand.
how you create this movement. On this show, we always talk about success and definition of success. What it means to you personally. So not in the broad strokes, but like what you personally define as a success.
For me, again, it really does go back to family because I'm a big believer in, what it says in the Bible is like, what would it be to gain the whole world and lose your soul, right? So it's about love. I believe life is relationships.
Yeah.
So if you can have amazing relationships with people, especially your family, have kids that love you, wife or husband that loves you, that's really what I think success is. Don't get me wrong. I love increasing our net worth and all that kind of stuff too. But when you do that, then you get to give back more, right? You get to live a fun lifestyle. You get freedom, decreases stress. But I would rather, like I've told my wife that, like if we didn't have any money, I wouldn't care as long as we're good.
Yeah.
That's really what's important in this life. But, it's fun to do the other stuff too. But that's, if I had all the money in the world and not my family, that's when I would be, I would not be in a good place.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, thank you so much again for being here, taking the time and sharing all this with them. This is like one of the best shows for sure. And, if you're watching this and if you stayed with us till the end, just please take one thing that you got out of this and implement it. The difference between success and failure is implementation. If you don't do anything from what we just covered and you just kind of watch it and sweep it under the rug and don't implement any of it, then Scott and I had fun, but you're not going to benefit from it in any way. So go ahead, do something with this, and till next week, wake up and be successful.